Is their Cordoba creator of the Leicester equaliser. El Khanous, how much room does he have here? El Khanous going for goal, and he finds it as well. What a turnaround here at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
4 minutes, Leicester have soaked up so much pressure. Fatawi jinking feet to get beyond his man, and the header from Jamie Vardy makes it 2.
It's Wood should score. Wood was Knockout. Yes! Anthony Knockout has done it.
Tielemans lining one up. What a goal! What a brilliant goal by Yuri Tielemans. And the Leicester City fans go absolutely potty. Ball in behind Damian Vardy. It's 11. It's heaven for Jamie Vardy. Hold the back page. Hold the front page. A Leicester player has smashed the record.
Good evening and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses. It is Wednesday night, which means it's time for Fox's Den, and we have a fun one tonight. No arguments about Well, it might come up actually. No arguments about managers and what the starting 11 should be this weekend. We have got some interesting takes, let's say, to look through tonight. Before we get into it, though, Neil, mate, how are you doing this evening?
All good. Looking forward to the takes. Let's get it going on.
Absolutely. Chris, mate, how you doing?
I'm fine. I won't need my cricket box then.
Chris, I told Chris earlier that we were doing hot takes, and he said, "Hot takes? I'm too old. What does that mean?" So I had to explain.
I had never heard that before. I'd never heard it before. I'm a granddad. I'm not down with the youngsters.
Manny, mate, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm in business mode, so let's crack on.
Oh, fucking hell. What the fuck? Jesus. Bloody hell, mate. All right, calm down. Well, okay, so let's get into it. Well, let's say hello to people in the chat first. Mark is here. Good evening to you, mate. Felix, hello to you. Kunal, Clibbo, mate, we need words. Where have you been on the call-in show the last few weeks, mate? You've disappeared just because... we're going down. I want you back on next Monday, mate. Well, I'm not there, but Anil will be. So, yeah, back on.
Sounded like a hot take there from Locks.
Good evening to you, Azola, and Ray as well. He's ready for the takes. Okay, so let's get into it. So for anybody who doesn't know, hello to Larry as well. For anybody that doesn't know, I put a tweet out last night asking for everybody's hot takes. So drop your Leicester City hot takes below. We'll be reacting and debating the best and worst of them live on Fox's Den. No opinion is too wild. Let's hear them. Now, there's some interesting ones. I've actually ranked them. I've put them in order of what I think is the least controversial to most, but you guys might disagree. I think that will probably happen. So, without further ado, let's start off. And the first tweet is from Mark Manderfield. It's 11. It's Heaven podcast. He said, "We're going to be a real menace to the Championship again next season if we get a decent manager. Don't forget, even Vestergaard looked good last season. Bilal, Fatawu, Mavididi ball next season. Just need a striker." So I'll come to you first, Anil. I don't think this one's too controversial. I think, some fans are hoping or aiming for a, promotion straight back up next season. Some are, like myself, are a bit worried, thinking we probably won't come back up. But yeah, what do you make to... wrong one. What do you make to Mark's tweet here, mate?
Like you, I do share a bit of a fear because there's a bit of an unknown as to how badly we're going to get done by the EFL. But I do have to say that if you watch the Championship this season, it doesn't seem as strong as it did when we were in it. Like, I know it is competitive at the top with those top 2-3 teams, although Sheffield United seem to be the bottlers this time around. But none of those 3 teams, in my opinion, despite their points tallies, look that impressive. Now, of course, when we go down, there will be Ipswich, who I think are going to be the favourites above us. But Southampton don't look too clever. I mean, you might still end up in the playoffs, which is a bit of a lottery. It depends on what team we keep. But yeah, I think just 1 or 2 players even could make a bit. Like, imagine Bilal El Khanous in the Championship. He'd piss that league by himself. And okay, let's say he goes. If we still have Fatawu and Mavididi, I mean, we've seen the damage that they can do already. And it's interesting he mentions a striker, but honestly, I think even if we have an old Jamie Vardy or Patson Daka, they'll still get between 15 and 20 goals. So I think we'll be competitive is my point. I don't want to take anything for granted. I mean, obviously, he does say getting a new manager, which I agree with. But I would expect the team to be competitive. I suppose the one caveat is what if we do get absolutely trounced by the EFL and they make us sell half the team? Well, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think on paper, we should have a competitive team.
Muted.
You muted,
Sorry,
Locks.
mate. Yeah, my bad. Chris, what do you make to the tweet from Mark here, mate? Because I mean, you know, I was on your show the other day, and we were speaking about King Power, and we obviously touched on next season. I personally don't think we're going to go straight back up, but yeah, what do you make to this?
I think the fans expect us to go straight back up because of what happened last time, but I've got to agree with Anil. It all depends on the EFL. Like I've said many times, they're like the child catcher for that huge net for us to go down and catch. It all depends what they hit us with. Again, it's a case of who we can hold on to. We do need a new striker. Daka didn't do it particularly last time we were down there. And Vardy, in my eyes, I mean, I did a programme on Vardy last night. I mean, we're going to be wheeling him on in bloody wheelchairs soon, you know.
Just quickly, do you know who the top scorer in the Championship is this season?
I'm trying to think who the oldest player is because it's probably him.
I'll give you a stat. This is a crazy one. It's Borja Sainz for Norwich, and he hasn't scored since December, by the way, and he's still the top scorer in the Championship.
And he's been playing as a winger, right? He's a winger.
Correct. So what I'm saying is that, well, I don't want to steal any thunder from Manny. I'll just give you that stat.
all I'll say is, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that Jamie Vardy couldn't do it as a 15-minute super sub at the end of the games, but we need another striker because I'd say I'm not convinced on Daka, and Jamie Vardy cannot do. It's a 48-game season plus cups and what have you. Vardy can't play like he's been used this season, next season. So we will need another striker. And if that means Jamie Vardy being the number 2, if you like, to come on for the last 10 minutes and terrorise defences, but then is he prepared to take a pay cut? Because at $140,000 a week for 15 minutes of football, it's a hell of a lot of money.
Go on, Manny, mate. What do you make to what Mark said here about... he thinks we are going to be, he says a real menace to the Championship. So basically he's saying probably HMS piss the league.
I have to say I agree with him. You've got to remember that even going down, our budget is still significantly higher than the majority of Championship clubs. Parachute payments still give you a massive edge compared to the others. Even if we lost 3 or 4 star players that we do have, I still think the squad that we do have, with the addition of some of those younger players like Monga and Evans and Cartwright and Aluko, another year with them, that squad alone should be good enough for top 6 with, I think the key point is, with competent management. If you add some players to it, then we really should be looking even above, top 2 places realistically. Again, if we don't sign anybody at all, it will be more difficult. If we do manage to sign some players, 2 or 3, 4 players, remember, Mavididi was 5 or 6 million, I think he was. Mads was 5 million, so 10 million buys you those 2. If you do your recruitment correctly. If we do our recruitment shockingly, or we start the season with our super old team and not many difference, then it's going to be much, much harder. But the key is with some competency, we should be fine. That league is not that good.
Manny, can I just ask you, was that a crazy frog? Was that a crazy frog ringtone?
Not Crazy Frog. It's the original Harold Faltermeyer who did this. Who did the score for Beverly Hills Cop 1? It's not a Crazy Frog. I go old school original. Harold Faltermeyer. Google it.
Your secret's out, Manny.
So
Eddie Murphy fan me.
so the next take again is about next season, and this one is from I think his name's Dan, but yeah, DT. He said, so it's the contrast. Given our arrogance, our lack of self-critique, our assumption we'll just walk it again next season, or backslapping culture, we won't make the top 6 next season unless we fluke it on a manager. Now, I think Dan actually did go on to elaborate that he meant when he's talking about arrogance and lack of self-critique, he was talking about the club itself, not the fans in particular. But I mean, it sounds a bit like Manny, what Manny just said, about us going straight back up, quite easy, no problems next season. But Anil, I'll let you respond to the set, Manny. What do you think, Anil, to the tweet here, mate?
I mean, I used to think this way too, but as I say, I think I've started watching the Championship more often because we know we're going to be in it. So I'm doing the research for the analysis next season and I feel more optimistic. But as Ray's saying here, it is all about who the manager is. I do think if we went down and we keep Van Nistelrooy, especially on that tragic form that we're in, I don't think we'd start very well and we'd end up with a Cooper-style situation where the manager gets sacked early on in the season and then all of a sudden he might have brought some players in and the new manager doesn't want him, etc., etc. I think that if we try and replicate what we did with Enzo, I don't expect us to do... What was the stat you pulled out, Manny, the other day? Like we won 27 out of the first 31 games or something ridiculous like that. I mean, that's insane. I'm not expecting that.
27 out of 30.
What? Really? That's
We won.
absolutely mental.
Yeah.
That's absolutely mental. But I mean, I'm not expecting that. But I think, if we get set up, we should be okay. But I think it's a fair take, this one, because I think we shouldn't expect it just because we did it once before, we'll do it again sort of thing. I think the club has to do the same sort of thinking, right? They can't just take it for granted, which I think is the slight worry that they might think we're fine and they cut a few corners, whereas last time they went in hard. I mean, I do think that this time round, we probably won't keep as many star players, would be my prediction. Because I think some of them, they even said that Enzo won them over and they were prepared to stay. Not so sure that'll be the case this time round. Although maybe, as Manny was saying earlier, the young players coming through could actually make the team even better than it was last time.
Chris, I mean, the reason I had, these first two quite low down on my scale of hotness, should we call it that, is because both opinion. I mean, the fan base does appear to be pretty split. Like some fan, like I said at the start, some fans are quite confident again coming back up first time, just like last year. But then others think it's we're in a bit more of a tricky situation this time around because we're facing potential punishment from the EFL, and also we're probably gonna we're kind of in limbo at the moment with the manager and things like that. We're probably thinking we're not going to get an Enzo, that type of thing. So what do you make to what Dan said?
Yeah, I mean, makes a good point. The problem we've got to accept is that I don't think we were strong this time around. I think we were a lot stronger when we came down last time. And as Anil said, we had held on to some decent players where this... we haven't got as many decent players. Plus the players that we bought in that we're going to have for a couple of years. And I know, I think lots of you said that the likes of Ayew and Dakova Reed could come into their own next season. That I would wait with bated breath to see, because I would disagree with you on that. But I don't think we've got the players that can do that. And what I would say is, if we do manage to come straight back up again, would we just come straight back down? Would it be better to have a season where even maybe get to the playoffs or something like that, but 2 seasons in the Championship?
That's a good take. That's a good take. That's a good take to discuss, if you ask me. Chris with the hot takes. He said he doesn't know what they mean.
I wouldn't have known that, but if we've got the 2 seasons, we'll still get the parachute payments for 2 seasons, and we'll have more time to bed in a new manager if we get one, and any new players that we are able to get, and of course the youngsters will have longer to develop as well.
Yep. Manny, go on, mate. I'll let you respond now, because I know you disagree with this, and also if you want to touch on what Chris said, maybe about is it better in the long run of staying in the Championship for another year, 2 years?
There's lots of ways you could take that and look at it and come to a conclusion. If we did take a longer time, but we carried on signing Dross, 2 years could become 3 years, could become 5 years, could become Forest. It took Villa quite a while to get back as well. There's no, you could end up being stuck here. Look, Sunderland have been down here for ages. Sheffield Wednesday have been down here for ages. You can start to embed toxicity and embed incompetence. Last time we came down, we murdered that league. You know, we were. I think there's only 1 week or 1 or 2 weeks where we weren't actually top in first position, and that's much easier than previous championship campaigns. And that is largely because, yes, we did have a lot of quality players who are no longer here. People like Iheanacho, but they didn't really massively play. Like, we bought Connor Cody, but we didn't really play him at all. So we actually had such a healthy big squad that we came up relatively comfortably. Even Leeds this year, for example, they sold a lot of players last summer and they're still in contention again. The gap is just that wide. Teams like West Brom, Middlesbrough, who have been looking to kick on, are struggling to kick on. They can't break that barrier. Sunderland got there for a period this season and then faded. It's just that their squads are smaller and weaker because they've had smaller budgets for a period of years. Now, I just think with more money, you can do more. I get the theory that maybe sometimes you have to take 1 step back before you can take 2 steps forward. But I'm just more skip the step back, just keep making forward steps. And the way you do that is with high quality recruitment and a manager who is employed to play with those players. So we did it once with Enzo. You know, somebody in the club had that vision that we should appoint Enzo. We gave him some supporting players. Enzo himself tweaked the squad. People like Ndidi, never played 8 for us regularly before. He remapped them, as you would say, and changed the nature of their style of play. If we get high quality, the key point is if we get high quality management with support with that management, the likelihood is we should be there or thereabouts.
There's a comment for you, mate, Tony Smith. Manny needs Caballero in, and we are assuming. Let me ask you this though quickly, Anil, because I think this is a good point by Conscious. A season in the Champ and not getting up would be really bad. Look at all the teams building a team for the Premier League down there. They're 20, 30 points behind Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United. I suppose the risk of doing that, of maybe, planning for, of course, the club would rather get up first. I know that. But, if you're down there for 2 years, let's say the second season, you've got a Leeds United then who dropped down, who've been spending £150 million or £100 million on players. And suddenly you're not the best team in the league anymore. You could be the 3rd, 4th, or 5th best team. And then there's a gap then from Leicester to the newly relegated teams. Whereas this season or next season that we're coming into, we will be the best team in there and we will have the best squad.
Yeah, but equally, you can end up in a bit of a Norwich situation because you keep ping-ponging up and down. It's hard to attract players when you do go up, and then you're caught in this sort of like horrible trap. I think the point is we're definitely going to do a show on this later in the year. I think everyone's super keen to do it because really what it's all about is having a strategy, right? And I think, again, I'm giving Manny a lot of credit today. You're earning it. But yeah, something he said, which at the time I wasn't quite in agreement with, but I think it's been proven to be the case, is that this time when we went up, we knew we could go down. So some signings we made were smart and some were stupid. So Okoli, smart signing in my opinion, because you know that if we go to the Championship, we should be good there. Bilal, fantastic signing, same sort of idea. I hate to say it, but I can even somewhat see the logic in Skip, even though I think he's proven to be a bad signing. But you could at least see the logic. The two that you couldn't see the logic with were Jordan Ayew and Bobby de Cordova-Reid, even though I suppose Reid we got on a free, because those two don't really fit into that strategy. And at the time I thought, yeah, but you know, you can't just go completely for young kids. You've got to have a bit of experience every now and again. But as we've seen, none of those players were playing in the game that we just played against Brighton, and we looked really good. And it was the young, fast twitch fibers type of players. So although I kind of do agree with Conscious, which is that I don't think we really want to be staying down if we can avoid it, I think if the team, let's say by the end of the season, was something like, you know, Alves, Monga, Nelson, Okoli, Stolarczyk, Jake Evans is coming off the bench and scoring goals or something like that, then maybe there is an argument that one more season, a little bit more time in the oven might make that dish taste a little bit nicer. Whereas if they go straight up to the Premier League, they're going to get battered and come back down again. I could maybe see that, but I think in general, it's right. We probably need to go back up straight away. But if, you know, the academy starts producing, it can produce good players consistently, and we get a style, then I think it'll work. I think the issue is, as we say, we go down there, and as you say, rather than keeping to that strategy, we get desperate. And it's like, no, let's just sign some chugger from the Premier League who's not good enough for the Premier League, but we think will be good in the Championship. And then they don't do it in the Championship either. Then you're in big, big trouble, and you don't want to go that way.
How many years do you get parachute payments for?
Three, but it's not all the same. So I believe it's something like 80%, 60%, 40. They might have changed it, but it's not because the idea is you're going to have players on massive wages and you can't just get rid of them right away. So it gives you a bit of a buffer there. But that's why the longer that you stay. So that's the thing is if Leeds don't come up again, actually this season, although I think they are, I think they'd be in a bit of trouble next time round. But they probably are.
That means
with Leeds.
Go on.
I was going to say with Leeds and I think that's why they cashed in. Of course, the players would have wanted to leave, right? But Rutter, Archie Gray, and Somerville, they got like 100 million for them three.
Yeah,
so they probably did that in the hope that if they didn't somehow go up again, then they might be okay. But they've got more.
Willie Gnotto, they still kept, and a few other good players. So it's not like
they got
a bad
some big
team,
fees as well. They got some really championship record fees. They got
for 40 million for Rotter.
That's big for the championship. The previous record must have been in the early 20s. So that's nearly double the championship record in one transfer. And then Archie Gray goes for about 38, 40 as well. That's big. You can't say no to that kind of money. You can imagine what you can do if you can find Mavridis for 5 million and Hermansen's for 5 million, for Fatahu's for 14 million. When someone offers you 40 for those players, you have to bite the hand off.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, Chris, for the next take. I'm going to start with you, mate. And Kasper Schmeichel. Okay, so we've got a tweet about Kasper. Elliot says, selling Schmeichel wasn't the mistake. It was made out. He was declining massively in 21-22. The issue was replacing him with Danny Ward. Again, I haven't got this one too high up because I kind of see where he's coming from, right? That we got rid of Schmeichel. He didn't want to sign or he wasn't happy apparently with the terms that we were offering him. If you like conspiracies, there's also a conspiracy out there why we got rid of him. But I won't go into that now. But Danny Ward is obviously the man who began the season, played pretty much most of the season as the number one goalkeeper. What do you make to this tweet from Elliot?
I actually agree with it. I can't disagree. I think Schmeichel was on the decline for us, but then was he doing what he was told to do? Was he staying on his line rather than coming off it, or vice versa? The defenders in front of him weren't doing a particularly brilliant job, and I don't care who you've got behind you in goal, he can't save everything if the defence in front of you is shit. Yes, putting Ward in there was a mistake. It's those hindsight glasses again, isn't it? He was the number two. He'd never let us down in the cup games. He hadn't had that because Schmeichel was never injured, never banned. He didn't really play. Well, he didn't play any games in the Premier League, did he, Danny Ward? And it is a different kettle of fish to the cups. That was the mistake. But would we have done any different at that point? Maybe the mistake was not changing him quickly enough for Everson. Maybe that was the big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, Manny, I'll ask you, mate. I think, it seems like the club took the cheap option and chose not to sign a goalkeeper, not to sign a new number one. Instead, they relied on Danny Ward, who had been at the club for some time, to fill Kasper's shoes. So yeah, what do you make to the tweet there, Manny?
The £120 million error, you mean?
Well, yeah,
it's basically what it was. If we had Kasper Schmeichel in goal, we're not going down that season, and we save ourselves 120 million quid. We were down by 2 points. Think how many points Ward cost us that season.
Yeah, that's true.
Kasper Schmeichel has gone on to show. You saw in the Champions League actually earlier this season how brilliant he can be. But there's a huge element that everyone's missing out on. He's a leader. He's a winner. He's proven. He's been there. He's seen it. He's done it. He's a Schmeichel. He has influence. He has standards. It upsets him if they don't win that weekend. If they get a draw, he's upset. That attitude, that mentality, that behind the scenes, that all of that he brings. I would go so far as to say, when his Celtic adventure is over, we should be doing everything we can to get him into our club, whether it's behind the scenes, whether it's coaching, whether it's as our striker. I tell you what, I would like him to be our championship goalkeeper above Jakob next season. because I think with his mentality and what he's brought, plus there's like I said before, I'm a bit of I like loyalty. This guy has done unbelievable wonders for his club, like Vardy, and the way that we treated him, the way we said goodbye, I think was a little bit out of order. Not a little bit, actually, it was a lot out of order. He deserved a lot better than that in my eyes. Like Wilf
Well, we
does
offered
now,
him a deal.
like
he wanted a longer contract.
No,
He
they
wanted
didn't offer.
I know, apparently he wanted longer.
I've heard 3 times where they said, I was waiting for an offer and they didn't come up with any offer. We've heard rumours that he wanted X years and they offered him one less. But according to the man himself, I heard him say on 3 podcasts where he was waiting for a deal and he wasn't going to go out begging them saying, hey, you're going to do anything. And by the end, they weren't offering him anything. So he looked at alternative options. That was it. He repeatedly says he never wanted to go. And he even said when he was at Nice, that I think it was the January when he was having a really hard time at Nice, that he'd be happy to come back. The guy's an absolute legend for this club. You cannot treat your legends that way. We've lost Albrighton. We've lost Wes Morgan. We don't know what's going to happen with Vardy. You cannot lose these people in the room. This is part of the reason why the standards have dropped, the leadership isn't there, because we let these characters, like, don't forget, Mark Albrighton didn't play last year much under Enzo, but he's there at training every day. He's still working hard. His attitude, even though he's not in the team, is bang on perfect, because that's who Mark Albrighton is. That rubs off. He's having a quiet word to one of the younger players. He's having a quiet word to the starters. He must have helped Fatawu a lot last season to come along. You cannot let these people out of your room. And every club has their own series of legends and heroes who've been committed. Kasper Schmeichel is and we've had some great goalkeepers in Gordon Banks, Peter Shilton, Kasper Schmeichel. But for this club and what he achieved, he's Leicester City's greatest ever goalkeeper.
Anil, let me ask the same thing to you, mate, as well. Then the tweet. So, I think Manny's. We all know that his obviously leadership. His leadership in the relegation battle would have been massive. But I suppose that is hindsight, because nobody, the club or even us fans, dared to think that we would be in a relegation battle that season. Like it was a shock, right? So it's not like
I'll be honest, there were 1 or 2 people I saw it, but I remember there was a thread on Fox's talk, but everyone was laughing at the person who made the post. They were like, oh my God, look at this. Talk about overreaction. He thinks we're going to go down just because we got rid of Schmeichel and Fafana. No chance. At the end of the season, there wasn't so many people disagreeing with that lad then.
I hope he rubbed it in. It in.
But what I'll say on that, I still actually agree with that tweet. I didn't even think it was necessarily such a mistake not to sign a goalkeeper immediately. But what I think the mistake is that my understanding is that basically Rodgers was going to have essentially a competition, like an audition, right? And there's 2 people that are starring for that audition. It's Danny Ward and it's Danny Iverson, right? And whichever one is better gets the shirt. And in theory, what was good about it is if one of them did start proving that they couldn't do it, you could then give the other one a run and see if they could do it. And I think Rodgers was just too stubborn. He made his decision at the start of the season, and it was the wrong decision, and he didn't change it at all, did he? It wasn't until Dean Smith came in that the change was made. And I remember very early on in that season, I think this might even have been in August, I was at that Arsenal game because it was just around the corner, and Danny Ward had a shocker in that game. And, that was the first time that I really thought, oh, man, we got it wrong. He might have been good in the Cups, but he cannot cut it in the Premier League. Like, very specifically, it was his positioning. It was atrocious. Like, he's literally standing in the wrong places. You can't have a goalkeeper. It don't matter if you're Gordon Banks. If he's literally standing in the wrong place, and it's an easy angle for someone to score. So then, he was given like 5 games. And then I think the next 5 games should have been given to Iverson. And then maybe rotate them. And I think that would have got you 3 to 5 points more, and we would have stayed up. And then let's say that then they tried both those keepers and they're both shit. Then in January, you do go and sign the keeper as the emergency option. So we just made so many mistakes on that. But yeah, I think it was always a position that we were going to need to replace eventually. I think especially as we were moving more and more towards trying to play it out from the back. And there is a comment about his kicking, and I think it's a fair point. And he's not that good with his feet compared to, say, Mads Hermansen. So I think we were always probably looking for that, or trying to develop Jakob in the background to see if he could take over. But in the end, as has been said by the other lads, for the sake of maybe giving him an extra 5 to 10 million over a couple of years, it's cost us in excess of 100. And now we're back, years. And I don't know about you, but seeing Yuri Tielemans score for Villa yesterday in the Champions League quarterfinals, and we were just one place of getting to the Champions League 2 seasons in a row. Oh man, it really made me feel pretty crap, to be honest with you.
That's what Yuri wanted, isn't it? He wanted Champions League football. And
could you imagine if it was with us? That's what
I
the
know.
story was supposed to be. He could have been the club captain, a legend. Instead, he kind of goes down as a bit of a snake, but still showed he's got the quality when you're doing it against a team as good as PSG were yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. Right. The next tweet. I'll come to you, Manny, first on this one, because I feel like you're going to have a bit to say about this. Steve Cooper was never the problem. That's it. They haven't given any context. They've just put that. Steve Cooper was never the problem. React to that, Manny.
Well, it's a problem if you want to stay up in the Premier League because he wasn't getting enough points to keep us up Premier League. And before those smart Alex say, we're 15th in the table. What have you seen how many points Wolves and Palace have got after the first 10 games of this season? It's like, Palace, I think, are in Champions League form. And I think Wolves are probably, top 8 form. I think Wolves have had 4 wins in a row recently at the moment.
I'll get the photo
well.
up that you shared
So
in the chat.
The 15th was totally a false position based on Palace and Wolves massively underperforming at the time. We all knew that those two clubs, once people like Mateta, who'd played at the Olympics, was going to get fit again and actually have a bit of a break, he was going to improve. Eze was always going to improve. Ismail Assar was a good signing. Palace were always going to get better. I think they're already on 43 points. Just to think, they were below us not so long ago, and they're on 43 already. So the trend was only going one way with Cooper. The issue wasn't so much getting rid of Cooper.
There you go, mate. There's the form table since Wolves' manager Wolves' manager came in. That is the form table. You see Wolves and Palace right up there in 7th and 8th.
Well, they're mutually exclusive. Getting rid of Cooper was the right thing to do. The wrong thing to do, as it's turned out, was employing Ruud. You know, there's not just either or. There are other options that were out there you could have had at the time. You know, I've been banging on about going back to Enzo ball since the start of the season. I don't know why we ever got rid of it in the first problem. You know, he had his issues, Cooper did, but partially because the fans didn't like him, the players didn't like him. I mean, nobody liked him here. You know, we always felt that he was loved elsewhere. It was just never the right fit all around. And stylistically, it was a pretty bad appointment. And I think, again, we have made a similar, we're not an unsure appointment. So, yeah, I think that's just a load of tosh.
Go on, Anil, mate. I'll let you have it next. Steve Cooper was never the problem. I mean, it's something that we have spoken about on the channel a lot, especially since Ruud van Nistelrooy turned out to be fraud Van Nistelrooy. But what do you make to this one? Because it is a comment that we get on our channel all the time, mostly from Forest fans, but we do get comments like this all the time.
Tony's hit the nail on the head here. This is what I think. Rodkin is the problem, not Cooper, who was a person who recruited him. Obviously it depends on like how that tweet is interpreted, because as you say, there's definitely some people that like it was, oh, you flag waving idiots that wanted Steve Cooper out, is, you pushed him out. I mean, mate, we got nothing to say about who comes in and who doesn't in terms of the managerial appointment. But you could say that, he wasn't the problem, because it's whoever actually agreed that was a good appointment to make and sign off on signings like Jordan Ayew and Bobby de Cordova-Reid and Oliver Skipp for this tragic season that we've just had. And in that case, you could say that, yes, it's basically, well, I don't want to get political here, so I won't say it, but it's like appointing someone to a top job when it's pretty obvious that person should never have been appointed in the first place. And you see that happen quite a lot. And when things go wrong, you got to be like, well, who appointed that person? It probably wasn't. If you think,
when you have a choice, if you think, and this is what Steve Cooper did, he had a choice. If you think Bobby Cordova-Reid is a better option than Steffi Mavididi, you need a sack. If you think Jordan Ayew should start over Abdul Fatawu, you should retire. It is absolutely horrific. Just imagine that. We've been suffering Ayew all season. How much do we miss Fatawu? When they were both fit, Fatawu still wasn't starting because Steve Cooper made that decision. Actually, Steve Cooper's the one who brought Skipp, Ayew, Reid to the club. Steve Cooper is a large part of why we're getting relegated beyond the games that he did, because he used our budget, at least half of our budget, on a load of slow dross, which served no purpose whatsoever, apart from add the amount of dead wood that we have to get rid of over the next few years.
I remember seeing
Chris.
a post on Fox's Talk where someone said when that appointment was made, I'm scared that by going for the cheap appointment, it's actually going to be more expensive in the long run, because we're going to have to pay him off to get rid of him. And then we're going to be stuck with his players that are expensive. Whereas if we go for the slightly more expensive manager now, Lox is nothing. Maybe it was him on a ghost account, stealthily getting in there and making that. But the person who put that, they proved to be right. And everyone agreed at the time it did feel well dodgy, just because the styles, like Steve Cooper had not proved in the Premier League, and in my opinion, not even really in the Championship, that he could play that sort of same fast, slick possession style that was under Maresca. So you're changing the squad, and it seemed dangerous to try and do that in what was going to be a pivotal season for us.
Chris, Steve Cooper, mate. I think you were one of the last ones, weren't you, to say Steve Cooper out. You did stick by him for quite a long time. What do you make to this tweet here? Steve Cooper was never the problem.
You sat down.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this? I actually agree with everything Manny has said.
Whoa!
Make a note of the time and the day, guys.
What?
Those two need a room. I don't know about you.
Look, I was one of the ones that wanted Cooper in. I did. I'm not saying it was the right decision, but I didn't think we'd get anybody else, to be honest with you, in the position we were in. If you go to Forest fans now and say, is Cooper that good? Would you have him back over Nuno? I don't think many of them would, to be honest with you. He took them up. He kept them up just with a points deduction. That's possibly what got him our job. The problem is not just Rudkin, but Top as well, because Rudkin apparently wanted Cooper, and then Top wanted Ruud van Nistelrooy. Well, if those two can't agree on who we should be taking and where we should be running the club, there is something. Well, we know there's something drastically wrong, don't we? If they can't agree, I mean, Top came out and said he wanted Ruud. Oh my God, I've not had a drink yet. Top came out and said, I believe that Cooper wasn't my choice. Well, you're the fucking owner of the club. What are you doing? You have the final say. You, despite what somebody said, you sign the checks. If he wasn't your choice, we don't sign him. And that's the problem, I think, more than Cooper. And look, hindsight's marvellous. We look back and go, yeah, it was the wrong point. Would we be any better off under Cooper? We will never know. I doubt it, to be honest with you. Like I say, I do agree with Manny about the signings, etc. I went mad when we signed AU. I won't tell you where I went when we signed Dakota Reid. But yeah, I don't think the problem was Cooper. I think the problem is, say, the people that are signing the managers.
Yeah, I agree. Right, let's move on to the next one. So, I'm going to put this one up. I don't think it's massively controversial because Ricardo Pereira exists. But Darren said, we are collectively worse with Sumare in the side. I actually don't think this is a hot take, though. Just comment saying. I think I've seen some of Darren's tweets before, and he really doesn't like Buba Sumare. And Neil, what do you make to this, mate? Because I suppose it's true if you take into account that Ricardo is available now, and you play Ndidi and Ricardo. Probably that's probably the pairing that you want to see. But I think he's been a little bit harsh on Buba.
It depends, I guess, on who you're comparing it to in either the current team or the past. I mean, what I will say is that the last time that we went down, Buba Sumare couldn't even get into the team. Now he's like one of the first names on the team sheet, kind of sums up the problem. Same with Yannick Vestergaard, though he hasn't played recently either. So, I mean, if you're going to compare Buba Sumare to the aforementioned Yuri Tielemans, well, no shit, yeah. You're probably better off even having a half-assed Tielemans in your team than Sumare. As it is right now, I think he's definitely gone off the boil recently. He looked better in the last game that we just saw. That different style change helped him. So there's a little bit of half of one, six of the other, a dozen of the other, you know, that sort of cliched saying, concede a point. I mean, right now there's one, maybe two people you can honestly say hand on heart make the team look better. A certain Moroccan player and a Portuguese diminutive fullback inverting are probably the two. The goalkeeper as well, maybe.
For the first time tonight, someone who's left the tweet, is actually in the chat. So here is Darren. He's in the chat. Wanted to see what we had to say about it. Manny, let's not spend too much time on this one because we've got some more controversial ones. But go on, Manny. Sumare.
It's always relative to the other options. You know, if Sumare doesn't look good, if the other options are Yuri Tielemans, but Yuri Tielemans is not the other option. The other options are Harry Winks and Oliver Skipp. The bottom line is, as inconsistent as Sumare might be, those other two are just consistently crap at this league. So I'd rather take the occasional 7 or 8 rather than a consistent 3 or 4. And I don't ever see the other two players ever getting to 7 or 8. And also the other little things that I've jokingly called them Oompa Loompas in the past. They're 5'9", they're small, they're not physical. Booba is a brick, you know what's it. Okay, he's inconsistent, but if he was a consistent player, he wouldn't be playing at this level. He'd be playing at a much higher level because his ceiling is much higher than the alternatives. So think of the long-term benefits, even though short-term is not working. More and more games, the more and more familiar he gets, in theory, the better a player he should become.
Chris, are you a boobs person or a ass? And when I say ass, I mean Harry Winks.
I've got to come back to that. I think it's the case that when you play in Sumare and Ndidi together, I just don't think that combination works. You've got to play either one or the other. I thought Sumare looked slightly better when Ndidi went off. That said, I was surprised it was Ndidi that went off because I would have taken Sumare off. He's not my favourite and he wouldn't necessarily be a starter for me, no.
Okay. The next one up here is I'm going to hand this one straight to Manny. Enzo is a huge part of the reason we went on this goal drought. Players being too used to playing easy passes instead of being risky kept us from creating chances that would have ended the goal drought much earlier. It reminds me of Graham. Obviously, Graham blames Enzo for us going down the season, which is wild. So that's why I wanted to include this one on here. What do you make to Shep Fox's tweet?
Well, I think he is misconstruing the whole purpose of what Enzo was trying to do with the team and why you have a short passing tiki-taka style system. I don't think he has quite the understanding of how you can achieve space, how you can create space, how you can get overloads, how you can maximize space, exploit certain areas where other teams are weak, tire teams out over the long run and over the season because the ball does most of the work rather than you doing the running. I think it's I wouldn't agree with that. Okay, that's quite gentle, wasn't it? You wanted more fire there, but I don't have to go on about the virtues of Enzo Ball. If you don't understand it by now, then me speaking for a minute isn't going to educate you.
There's some people replying. I suppose Imran's wrong in the
case in point.
Well, I suppose he's wrong in the sense that we won the league last season, so it worked. But Anil, what do you make to Shep Fox's tweet there about it being part of the problem why we can't score?
Have a look at the last analysis showed that we did. We played some of the best we have in it for ages, and it's because we went back to Enzo Ball and Enzo's system. I think where people get confused is that in the championship, 90% of the games that we played were against teams that put all of their players behind the ball, sat in these deep blocks and made it tough for us to break down. And that was difficult. And I do think that Enzo could have tweaked his style. In fact, should have tweaked his style a little bit to get round teams that were being that defensive. That's why we were weaker in the second part of the season. But every time we played a team that dared open up on us, we looked absolutely liquid football, to quote Alan Partridge. Even last season, we didn't look good against Bournemouth. Southampton got wrecked. Leeds, that second game at Ellen Road, they won due to some defensive mistakes, but we cut them open easy time and time again. And it's all because when we attack with 5. We do it for these fast transitions and you're playing around the press. And that style does work in the Premier League. So that's what we needed to go this season. So there's a little bit of truth to it because we may well next season go back to a style similar to what we did with Enzo, but it's the same thing. I like the amount of games, like I say, if you've been watching the Championship where the top 3 slip up, it's because I guarantee you it's the same thing. They'll play against a team. The team's going to park the bus, put everyone behind the ball. They have all this possession, but it's hard to make chances and they get done on the counter. And then you think, oh, what's this slow possession style sort of thing? And, you know, in some of those games, maybe you do actually have to just rely on 50-50s and say, do you know what? Jamie Vardy, even at his age versus one of the centre-backs, he's better than them. Let's just give him chances and we'll take the scrappier win rather than it being, a bit like Nigel Pearson used to do, just win the physical battle. But no, Enzo was bang on to having a good style. It's what all the modern teams are doing. So I disagree with the understanding of it, but I think it's one of those that Manny says, I hate to say it, some people just don't get ball. They don't understand how the modern game is played. And I think even worse, they don't have the appreciation to want to learn or get better at it. Right? You know, even like when we do the analysis shows, we're not claiming that we know everything. We don't. What I love about it is we get a lot of people actually in the chat today, Conscious and people like that come up with good comments. And it's like we all learn together, or they might identify something that we didn't. And like, oh, wow, I didn't even notice that. You're right. Yeah, look at this player doing that. And that's creating an overload here, or it's a solution to the problem that we came up with. It's too simple just to look at it like in that way. I mean, there's a lot of just quickly, Manny can talk about PSG yesterday, which was kind of like Enzo ball on crack. Ooh, and although they did ride their luck towards the end, they looked absolutely brilliant early on in that game.
So when we talk about Enzo ball, I think there's such a focus on the short range passing across the back. And, you know, those people think it's completely pointless, you know, fast to, who was it, Doyle last season, and back to him and back to the fullback and then back. People think it has no purpose. It does have purpose, even though it looks to the casual observer that it doesn't. It's all about trying to entice people onto you so you can find pockets of space that you can exploit between lines. And eventually, when people keep chasing the ball, you do that over a period of game or a period of games, they get more tired, you're going to find more opportunities. Also, Enzo ball means that you play 3 at the back, not 4. An extra man in midfield means that we can have 2 touchline wide wingers who are dribblers, good one-on-one, which is, to me, extremely exciting football. But you also have the support 8s to make those wingers more effective. Like, to me, I think that's just genius. You're getting extra men, you're getting men out wide. You know, when you do it properly, as we saw under Enzo, we saw several passing moves where we had like 50 plus passes that one of them will result in a goal. And I just think that is just aesthetically stunning to watch. The smartness, the quality of it. The problem is that the speed at which you play it can be a bit turgid, especially game after game. You're like, get on with it. We can smash this team. I understand that. But there is a purpose to all that sideways stuff. But there's more factors than just the sideways. There's more to it. I find massively exciting, to be honest. And we saw a hint of that at the Brighton game at the weekend.
Chris, let me ask you, mate, for your opinion on Enzo and this tweet in particular here. So, you know, Shep Fox is claiming, or he believes that he's, you know, Enzo and the way we played last season is part of the reason why we've struggled to score this year.
Well, we didn't struggle scoring under Enzo last season, did we? It's very easy to pin blame on a particular style. I don't know whether Enzo ball is the best or not. I was in the camp where last season everybody was moaning it was boring football, it wasn't exciting, and yet we were 17 odd points clear at the top of the league, and that's all I'm bothered about. You know, I'd sooner win a game 1-0 than 5-4. My heart isn't that good anymore. No, I don't think. Would Enzo have kept us up? I don't know. I think we'd be in a hell of a lot better position than we are. I think it's a case of having the right players for the style that you are playing, and I think that for me is the problem. Is that you know, Ruud hasn't got the players, or the players aren't as good for him in the Premier League as they were in the Championship. So if you're looking at, you know, is FaZe the best defender we've got? not in my opinion. If you're going to play a style, and maybe this is the problem with us getting Cooper in, and then it all changing, and then getting Ruud in, and it all changing back again. You know, if you've got the players and you've got the system to fit those players, and vice versa, then you should be better than we are now.
Neil, I know there's a couple comments that you've seen in the live chat that you want to come back on, so go ahead, mate.
No, there's some good ones here. I think that's fair. Like one from Imran, which is fair enough. So he's like, these were one-off games in the championship. Enzo was proper boring, yawn. And look, I agree. There definitely were some games under Enzo that were really boring. And like I say, he would get the ball into the final third, have the 70% of possession, but we didn't even make any chances. It was like too intricate and too sort of trying to play around the gaps and not just force the issue when you've clearly got the opposition on a back foot. So that's an adjustment I personally think we should make. And there's some good ones from Brookline as well. He goes, Enzo ball seems to have a malleable definition with certain panelists. When we play well, it's Enzo ball. And when we play poorly, it's not Enzo ball. And equally, it sort of feels like some people have the opposite opinion. Like when it's slow and backwards, it's Enzo ball. And when we're fast attacking, it's not that. There is like a room in between. Another good comment here from Brookline. He says, Enzo ball is not about fast transitions. Go watch some Chelsea fan channels. It's about rigid patterns of play and slow build up. And he does sort of have a point. Enzo's definitely doing that this season. But as I say, at its best, what you see with his style, and we saw this at the weekend, is that you win the ball back, you play around the press, and like Bilal El Khanous was amazing at doing that against Brighton. He does like a little shimmy or he does a 1-2, he beats the press, you take 5 or 6 players out of the game, and then you do like a fast attack, which is transition. So that aspect of Enzo's style is mustard. That's what we've got to keep. But I do agree that there's a certain aspect of it, which is when you know that the opposition are just going to sit back and you're being too cagey and you're like just trying to throttle the ball because you're too scared that you're going to have like a counter-attacking opportunity. Like I think the same is true with Pep Guardiola, by the way, as well. Sometimes you see Man City win, you think, it's just so boring. It's just like all the teams in one half of the football just popping it and there's no real excitement about it. So I do very much understand that. But it is a results-orientated game as well, so you'll have to see what we do. Maybe there is some way of going sort of like take aspects of it, like I say, but not make it so monotonous to watch at times.
Yeah.
I really remember Barcelona fans complaining about the days under Pep and Messi, how boring football was. I really remember Man City fans complaining when they won 4 leagues out of 5 how boring the football was. I really remember.
No, they did though, Manny. Trust me, a lot of I know this sounds crazy. Like you said, a lot of Man City fans do complain about their style. I'm not making it up.
Like someone just said, we had Leicester fans complaining when we were 17 points clear top
it wasn't
of the league that we're in.
There was a very small number then, Manny. I think the majority of the moaning came when we gave away a 17-point
You can't whinge when you're 17 points clear at the top that you don't find the football exciting. Do you really want to hit it long to, we get a free kick, hit it long to Jerry Taggart for a header across goal and maybe Matt Earlis in the middle again? I mean,
that is a good point. I want Imran to respond to that because he literally cracks one off to David Moyes football. Sorry, Imran, I know you do. And David Moyes, he always struggles against teams that also park the bus because he's not going to answer for it. David Moyes does get good results against the top teams, but his football is also proper dry, boring. It's the reason why the West Ham fans wanted him gone as well. So it's like, what if we're struggling and also just doing like, pump it long to the big man up top football? There's got to be like a balance, right?
In the end, every time you play that way, the fans get to a point, usually 3 years max, before they've had enough. Everton fans want rid of him the first time. Man United fans want rid of him. West Ham fans, despite winning a European trophy, still en masse want rid of him. And it won't be too many years before they flash new stadium, before they fall out of Moyes again. And in 3 years, he's gone again because there is a ceiling to the way that style of football can get you. And we as a club have already surpassed that ceiling. So we don't want to be in relegation battles playing limited styles of football. Again, we're going to go into it on Chris's show later, but if you understand the evolution of the game, then that style of football has no place in the modern game. That's why nobody plays it.
Let me, okay. I want to move on to the last, there's 2 more tweets. The last one is, it won't take us long.
We should do this show again. It's pretty fun, to be honest with you.
Well, the next one is my good friend Felix. So you've seen him in the chat and you've seen him on Twitter. His name is LCFC Rude. He's a big fan of Ruud van Nistelrooy, and I can promise you that this tweet is not rage bait. He genuinely means this. If we got Ruud in the summer, we wouldn't even be remotely close to relegation. Now, Anil, I'm going to hand this one straight to you, mate, because I think this is crazy. I think Ruud has proven that he is just not a very good manager.
It's one of those that earlier on in the season, I would have agreed with this statement. And you know what? You never know, because if it's in pre-season, you can cut players out, whatever. You could make those big decisions early. But I think it is not a great take, because at the end of the day, as you say, he's been in charge for longer than Steve Cooper has. He still doesn't have as many points as Steve Cooper got for us. And I think, like I say, the big things for me, I think number one is just the fact that he clearly gave up very early on, and that is not the sign of a good manager. Like there've been there you go. That I think is probably what it would tend towards. That's the thing. He didn't change the styles fast enough, and I think also for me, the thing that concerned me is that when he first came in, actually the style of play that he wanted to do is he kept the same thing as Cooper. He kept the overloaded fullback. It's only in this last game that he's gone back to the Enzo system. It's like, if he'd have changed the style sooner, and even though we were losing, you saw more promising results, maybe I could see the sort of point there. But I don't really get it. That said, and as well, right, you might think, oh, well, maybe he wouldn't have signed players like Jordan Ayew and Bobby Reid, but he was using Jordan Ayew. He was more addicted to Jordan Ayew than Steve Cooper was at one point, if you remember. It was kind of insane from the Dutchman. So, no, I think in general, I would not agree with that. I think I think we might have done even worse, to be honest.
Chris, what's your opinion, mate, on this? If we got Ruud in the summer, we wouldn't even be remotely close to relegation. And then he's called it RVN Sipple. What do you think, Chris?
I can see where he's coming from, but I don't 100% agree with it. And I know what Anil's saying about Ayew and Dakova Reid, how often he's played them. The question is, had we got him in the summer, which I don't think was ever on the cards because he was at Man United and he wanted to stay there until they got rid of him, which they did. But would we have bought those players?
No.
If Ruud van Nistelrooy had been in charge in the summer? That's the thing. Would we have bought, and no disrespect, but would we have bought a better standard of players? And of course, if we had bought better players, then we might be in a better position. At the start of the season, all us Leicester fans were expecting, most of us, was 17th. We thought we'd get points deduction. If we can finish 17th, mate, by 1 point or goal difference, we'll be happy. Could Ruud have got us to that point? Would us not getting the points deduction? Possibly. He possibly could. Because like I say, I think, and no, Edward, exactly. But we wouldn't have got the players that we did get. And I think that was where the difference would be.
Manny, what's your opinion, mate, on this one?
He would have had a better chance, of course, trying to bring in his own players to suit the style he wanted to play. But I still think that Ruud has two major issues over the time he's been with us. Firstly, if you can't add the word ball to the end of your first name, I don't think you're going to work in modern day. Everybody needs to know what you're about. So Enzo Ball, we know what you mean. Pep Ball, we know what you mean. What was Cooper Ball? No idea. What was Ruud Ball? No idea. So Ruud Ball actually sounds pretty good. But
yeah, it does.
The problem is, what is Ruud Ball? I don't think Ruud himself knows what it is. And I think that's managerially the first thing he needs to decide for himself. What am I about? So I think he suffered from that. And secondly, I think teams, I've always been taught, teams reflect the character of the manager. So if you're a spunky manager, you're going to have a spunky team. I think Ruud is just too cool. He's too cool. He's too calm. He's not animated enough. He's not intense enough. And so I think as a character, he needs to find that. Enzo's pretty intense, and most good managers are. So I think if he had those two elements, if I was Ruud, I would take those two away and work on those two.
Turd ball. There we go. Okay, the very last one is actually, it's funny that I saw this come up because it is something, and Manny's going to say, or he's not going to say anything, he's going to slap his forehead when I say this. It's actually something that I said once upon a time on a show when we were doing a team predict a while back. So here we go. The last one of the night. Oliver Skip should play as an inverted right back. I think, to be fair, I actually said an inverted left back, so not so bad. No, Anil, inverted right back, Ricardo. Obviously, I don't know what Kunal means exactly. If he means he should just be the number one choice, I don't know if it's just when Ricardo is out. But what's your opinion on that take?
Well, you know what? We've never seen it, so you can't really judge. I mean, I've got a suspicion it probably wouldn't work that well. But what Kunal means there is he probably wanted us to go back to that style, which I still believe is the better way. Like I said, we look really good against Brighton playing that style. We scored a very good goal against Forest playing that style as well. Unfortunately, with Ricardo out, what can you do? So he wants to try a player in that position. I will say, though, that I think over the recent games that we've seen Skip, he's not that good at playing in traffic or playing out under pressure. We did a segment on Ricardo yesterday where he did some things. Where he looked better is he actually looked better in a slightly more advanced role where when you're out of possession, he's in the double pivot. But when you're attacking, he's joining as a higher 8. He looked better in that role than, like I say, the number one thing, if you're going to be playing in that inverted position, is what do you do when there's 5 people around you that are trying to get the ball off you? You've done that in real football. It's pretty difficult. So you need someone who's really composed, got quick feet, that can have that awareness, spin, swivel, get out of trouble and play it that way. And I'm not convinced he's got that in his arsenal, to be honest with you.
Chris, what do you make to this one, mate? Kunal says, yeah, he thinks he means it. He should actually start as well. So, yeah, what do you make to that?
I do not agree at all with the first point. I don't think that's the position for him. I do agree with Anil again. I'm going to have to stop this, aren't I? Keep agreeing with everybody. I think Skip is better when he plays a more forward position. And I think next season we might see with Skip what we saw with Winks. He may be our Harry Winks next season. I just don't see what all this hatred is for Oliver Skip. If you said to me, is he a good player? I would have to say I haven't seen enough of him to judge him in a Leicester shirt. Because it's like saying after the first season, was Kelechi Iheanacho a good player? We don't know. We didn't see him often enough. He doesn't start. So I don't, necessarily get all this hate on him. Should he start? Well, would you have him over Sumare? Possibly. Yeah, I definitely not in that inverted right back role. No, we're talking about another Daniel Amati, aren't we? But no, not that for me, definitely.
Okay, Manny, you called him an umpa. You said his hairline is crap. You said he looks
Never
32,
his hairline.
not.
Personally.
You said he looked 32, not 23. You said he couldn't run. You said he couldn't tackle. You said he couldn't shoot. You said he couldn't pass. What do you make to the shout for Oliver Skip as an inverted fullback?
I think once you let Hamza go out on loan, that he could fulfill that squad role as your backup to Ricardo should you consistently be playing Enzo ball, mostly because he's used to operating in that area of midfield. I think he has played left back for Spurs once. I think that's right.
He played there twice, and he had 2 very good games as well, by the way, against Liverpool.
Hamza wasn't a right back, but sometimes found himself under Enzo as your backup squad player in that position. Yeah. So as a backup, well, I'd have him backup to the backup myself. But as a squad position, you could have him in there. And in terms of I think he should start, but not for the reasons that you think. Because how else are we going to get him out the door? Put him in the shop window, give him Premier League minutes. It's a shame Steve Bruce hasn't got big budget, because someone like Steve Bruce would snap him up off your hands and we'd probably get a decent fee. And I personally think we're paying the guy 55 grand a week. That's 20 grand is that's about £2.5-3 million a year over a 4 more year contract. That's £12 million we're going to pay him in wages. Add on about 3 in salary. That's 15 million quid. if we can actually get him out the door, sell him for say 10, you get the 10 in cash plus the 15 you're saving. It's a £25 million swing. We can do a lot with £25 million out the door.
There we go. Sit on the fence, why don't you, Manny? Okay, so that brings there's one more we don't need to talk about though. It was from Kunal as well, and he did say Woutface would be a good striker. So at this point, I thought maybe he was rage baiting slightly, but only he could let us know. We don't need to talk about that. We don't need another reason for him to stay.
Anything.
He'd be a good clown. Look, big shout out to everybody who replied to the tweet and gave us their hot takes. We will definitely do this again. I was quite surprised. Some of them were quite tame. Next time, bring the heat. Bring some more. I want to hear why. I think somebody put a comment. Let me see if I can find it. Brookline G said, Jamie Vardy is a terrible club captain. That's a juicy one that we can talk about next time. So, it will be back, and we will ask again, and we'll react to them again. Chris, cheers for coming, mate. LTID, give it a shout because I know that you're live with Manny in 25 minutes.
Yeah, basically LTID TV on YouTube and all the socials, and we've got a show coming up at 8:30 with Manny and Anton. We're talking about the best way that we should be replacing our manager. Is it to get somebody in that's experienced, like a Sean Dyche, or is it to go to somebody that we don't know but will fit into the player system that we can build on and expand? Manny, of course, is a big fan of the Sean Dyche side, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think Manny's got some research to throw at Ant.
We're going to do the history and evolution of football in 5 minutes.
There we go. Sounds like a good YouTube video, that, mate.
Yeah.
Maybe. Could be a load of tough. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. I can guarantee Renus Michaels is getting a mention, though, right?
Top of the list, my friends. 1960, 68 or 69, I think it was.
Yeah.
Hey,
the
guy won 3 European Cups in a row for Ajax. 3 in a row. Not even the great Brian Clough or Fergie or any Peps got anywhere near that kind of number. 3 European. Imagine that. 3 Champions Leagues in a row.
Zidane did it, and a lot of people say his style was pretty crap, though, which is.
I would say we'd still get moaners, wouldn't we?
You can never, if you want to moan about Zinedine Zidane as a footballer, go and watch a different sport, please.
No, the manager, not the footballer.
Ooh,
that's a different show for a different time.
Show.
Yeah. Right, there we go. When are we back live? I actually don't know. I'll let you know. I'm not sure at this point in time. We'll definitely be live very soon. I don't know yet. So there'll be a video out tomorrow. They're pre-recorded, so stay tuned for that one. As we just said, Chris and Manny are live on LTID TV in 20 minutes, so make sure you go and watch that one. And yeah, we'll see you on Blue Ticket Glasses very, very soon. Make sure to hit like and subscribe as well. Bye-bye.